Welcome back to Man the Helm podcast. Today I am joined by Donovan of Rattlesnake Cables. How's it going, sir?
It's going great.
Well,
How
I'm
you
happy.
doing?
I'm good, man. It's one of those things. People that listen to the podcast might know this, but I only really work like 3 days a week at my quote unquote 9 to 5. Now they're a long 3 days, but this is kind of my weekend. I get a 4-day weekend
Nice.
almost every weekend. You know what I mean? So,
Man, you're lucky.
I know, right? I'm right smack dab in the middle of it right now. No, but it's one of those things where I make up for it. I still work, the appropriate quote unquote right amount of hours. It just, is condensed into that 3-day time frame, unfortunately.
Yep.
But
Gotcha.
before we get into what you're doing now, let's kind of start at, I don't care if we want to go back to the genesis. Where'd how'd you start getting into music? What made you want to start, playing instruments, and then we can work our way up to where we are today.
Wow. Okay. So go way back.
Yeah.
Let's see. I would say the first time I ever wanted to pick up an instrument was Van Halen.
Okay.
It was the very first time. We're talking probably sixth grade, junior high, and I was about a freshman, and I remember making the very first phone call to a music store because I understood it was a Kramer.
Okay, yeah.
With the masking tape, and that's I think at the moment that's all I really cared about was I wanted to get a guitar and paint it like that, not necessarily learn how to play it. But that was kind of the very first time I was like, oh, it'd be sweet to be a rock star, right? And
Right.
It was really based on the guitar. But then I feel like I think maybe you and your listeners would probably can relate to this. There's a point where music becomes more than just tapping your feet and go, oh yeah, this is a great beat. You actually start breaking it down mentally before you're a musician. You just start really getting into the lyrics and the reasoning behind the songs, the energy and the emotion. I remember that was probably my sophomore and junior year in high school. And that started with metal, just kind of going from Van Halen. It went right into Ozzy, and then it went into Motley Crue, but then Metallica, super hard. I was super, super into Metallica, which then that segued into punk. And I got really, really into punk. And that segued into just like post-punk and goth music and all sorts of stuff like that. And that's when I actually got a guitar for the first time. And I was trying to be in bands or just trying to play with people. I was in Kalispell, Montana, and there was hardly anybody playing music at all. So even the concept of being in a band is very difficult.
Sure.
All I could really do is find someone who can maybe play bass and another guitar player, and we can just play and just dream of being in a band someday. So that was kind of the genesis of music for me. And then from that point on, I moved into different towns in Montana and got into bands and, the whole like slack rock stuff of the 90s and math rock and all that stuff until, fairly recent. I was in a band a couple of years ago that just ended. So right now I'm bandless, and I think I'm okay with that for a bit. But we'll see. They always find you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, I'm just north of Nashville, so I've done the cover thing for so long, and it's so nice not to have to worry about that for right now. Like, don't get me wrong, I miss playing live, but man, I don't miss playing the same 60 songs over and over and over again. Like it just got so, it just felt like I was in like the worst perpetual loop I've ever been in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could just tell the look on some people's faces when they'd come up to the stage to request a song. It's like, dude, $5 says it's going to be Tennessee whiskey. You know what I mean? Just by the way they're coming up or something. That song still gives me nightmares. Just every time I heard it, just the absolute dread. So, I think it's really important though too, because everybody kind of has that moment of realization of, like, not necessarily knowing you want to be, like, let's say very specifically a guitar player, but you have that, and it sounds cheesy, but that MTV moment. Like, everybody has something as to that effect, whether you saw a band play live, whether you saw it on MTV, whether you had a brother or a sister or a family member that played guitar. Like, you have a moment where that kind of like springboards you. That's why I like to go back to the genesis, man, because what's always funny to me, especially when people talk about the gear world, or, musicians that are doing the thing, or, high level people, we all have this like extremely similar backstory,
Yeah.
and it's just how we navigated through our own life to get to where we are today. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I like to go to the Genesis, to kind of show that common trend across all musicians, man.
Yeah. I also think, it's to be a musician, unless you've made it. It's just an unbelievable series of failures,
Yeah.
and constant getting knocked down, but it doesn't matter the success. That's where you start really kind of like, you have this tug of war of like, why am I playing guitar? Why do I want to be in a band? It's just when you start taking it as an art form, or like, part of your, being, then it's okay. But if you're trying to, I'm like, hey, I'm trying to be a rock star and it's not happening, then it's like, it's just brutal. But, now I'm getting, to a certain age, and I'm starting to see all my friends of that certain age, and they still play guitar and they still play drums and whatever, because they just love it. And I just always think that's really interesting. It's a slog, but it's part of the journey.
For sure, man. I fall into that trap probably monthly, of just getting in my head, like, dude, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Whether it's with guitar playing in general, whether it's with any social media aspect of it, but like you said, dude, that's when you have to have that introspective, like, step back. Let's scope out again, and let's remember why we started doing this. With the 13-year-old, 14-year-old, however old you were when you started doing this thing, would they really be worried about this, or were they just happy to get off of school and go play guitar? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like, that's always what I get stuck in that trap, and then I draw myself back, immediately. Just like, dude, why are you worried about this, man? Half this stuff doesn't even matter anyway. You just like playing the instrument,
Yeah.
So what kind of started the more business aspect side of things? Because I know you've done other things besides just Rattlesnake. I know Rattlesnake has been around for quite a while now, but you were doing some stuff online. What was I'm so sorry. I feel like a jerk now.
Probably Effects Bay.
Effects Bay. Thank you.
Yep.
Man, had a brain fart for a second. Sorry about that. But so what kind of started getting you in that train of thought?
Well, and it's odd that you say that, because we just brought up, I just had this conversation here at the shop.
Okay.
It's going back, even like a weird Genesis thing again. There's two weird things. All of my friends growing up in, at the time, Kalispell, all the parents, including my wife's parents, were self-employed.
Okay.
So my dad owned a grocery store. My best friend, had a shop, and it was just over and over. It just definitely surrounded by entrepreneurial tendencies, without really knowing that was kind of like getting beaten down in all of us. And now throw that into skateboard, freestyle biking, and early bands where everything was do it yourself.
Yeah.
We were putting on skate exhibitions and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So in my mind, I never went to college. So in my mind, I've always been an undereducated person, which to me never really matters. And of course, I want my kids to be, go to college and do all the things like I didn't do.
Sure.
But if it wasn't for just being around those parents that were, own their own businesses, and I see their work ethic and see how hard it takes to do that. And then, simultaneously putting on a skate demo and trying to flyer a town with, our band flyer.
Right.
That was the perfect stew to start anything I wanted. So there was a point where I worked in restaurants, and I got into web development. So I was an IT person, did that for a couple of years, and immediately started my own IT firm, which then, when I say firm, it was just me and my wife.
Well,
but,
sure.
It was great. And that led into Effects Bay, and that was like in the wild west of blogs. I was just brand new, and I was excited to just talk about pedals and talk about pedal boards and gear setups and bands, and I originally just made that as just kind of a platform where I could just whatever talk about stuff. But then immediately I would start getting emails like, "Oh, I love your blog. I read it every day," and I did that for a long time. It's probably like 10 years. And that kind of segued into Rattlesnake as far as an online presence, where, I had, I was making a product, and then I just remember posting on EffectsBay that I had some cables, and that was the first time I even said, "Hey, anybody want to buy some cables?"
Right.
It didn't even have Rattlesnake. It wasn't even Rattlesnake yet, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the first time that went into that. But as far as the cable genesis was just a nerd aspect of soldering, and then started building my own pedals. And I thought that was going to be, especially with EffectsBay, it was pedal related.
Sure.
And I had a lot of fun working on pedals, and I made a bunch and sold a bunch and worked on people's modded stuff. I really enjoyed that. And then, but until I made a cable for myself, and I went to a band practice immediately. It was like the bass player's like, "Hey, what's that? Can you make me one?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then suddenly it was just, everyone was just calling me for cables. And then I was starting to get friends of friends, and I was like, "That's cool." And then there was complete strangers. So it was a friend of a friend of a friend, I don't even know, in another town.
Yeah,
"Hey, I
you
heard
got
you
like-
make cables."
You got like 6 degrees going on right now.
Yeah,
or
and I'm
something.
like, I'm not even trying. I'm not even. I was like, wow, I sell these way easier than I sell pedals, and that's what kind of started, the head scratcher of like, maybe we could do Rattlesnake. And it's our 12th year this year, and it's been quite a crazy journey of like, abandoning my IT position and that whole thing, where I was trying to like just segue, and have 2 kids and a mortgage, and that was scary, and Rattlesnake was barely crawling, and we're trying to like funnel all of our energies into that. And we just all believed in it so much, and our team that we gathered over the years believe in it so much. So it's just super positive, and something really excited to just be a part of. So every day I just go to work and I go, I can't believe I do this every day.
Right.
It's the best job.
Yeah. Well, and see, this is why I like once again to start at the genesis of these things, right? Because I've talked to a lot of people that build, anything from guitars to pedals to stuff like that. And that's how it always happens. You know what I mean? Once again, we have a similar experience, but the way we navigate how we get to, where we are today is completely different. But I think that's going to happen. I think it happens multiple times in life where you have that like aha moment. The bad thing is now you got to you have to go all in on it though.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't just do it halfway, because then you're nothing's going to happen for you, man. And that is really scary. But I think kind of like what you were saying, having that upbringing of being around those entrepreneurial minded people, and seeing that it can work, that you can work for yourself. Like you said too, with the musician side of things though, man, it's going to be a lot of really bad days, a lot of really bad weeks, some bad months, bad years, but the common trend that keeps on coming back, man, is that you're passionate, that this is what you are doing, man. You couldn't see yourself doing anything else, I think it's real important when people see that for the first time to capitalize on it. You know what I mean? Even though it is scary to make that leap, you have to,
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying about the musician, I mean, I've been trained to just deal with failure every day in my head, in reality. And it's just that I'm also just an insane grinder. Yeah. So to me, that's how I feel, how I personally overcome failure, or maybe not, let's not say failure, but lack of immediate success.
Sure.
Where
absolutely.
Right. So it's just to grind through it, keep playing the show, still practice once a week, still, get the band together, still just grind. And, maybe it'll pop, who knows? So when the business, I just really just associate that same kind of mindset where you're right. There are some bad days and you're like, man, I don't know. Like, what did we do? Why did we start this? And it is just the focus on the grind, just like, okay, do better today than you did yesterday. Like, what can we improve upon? What can we try harder with? And like I said, we have a team, and this team, we all believe in these same kind of positive attitude and pushing through these obstacles. And so that what makes it easy.
Yeah.
Also, they help me get through those.
Well, anybody that believes they can do anything on their own is lying to themselves. You have to have some sort of support system. You know what I mean? And when I say support system, I don't mean someone doing everything for you. I mean someone that you can rely on to help you through those situations, whether that is a spouse, somebody maybe that you're a good personal friend, or people that you work with on a daily basis. Like you have to have that human interaction and that human support system. You know what I mean?
Totally.
If you don't have that, that mental block like you were talking about, where you just get in your own head, that's just going to start to chip away at you, man, and it's going to win. You know what I mean? Especially if you don't have anybody to help you with that. So that's the biggest thing, man. Like I talk to my wife all the time, man. I'll be up in my room playing, trying to get something down, and I can't get it down. And I'll come down all frustrated. And, that's one of the first things my wife will say. It's like, are you really mad about not being able to play notes on your guitar? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Yep, you're right. I'm gonna go ahead and just calm down for a minute. It's nothing to be upset about. Got to keep me in check, man. So you kind of started having some people that you didn't know, which I'm sure was super exciting, asking about, buying some cables. I'm sure at that point in time, you guys still weren't like, it was just you making cables, right?
Yeah. So, early days was myself and my wife, Amy, who's like, I look at Amy as like an extremely huge player in this business.
Okay.
I'm like the face. It kills me. I don't like to be the face, but that's just the reality. I'm the one doing the podcast, but I love the fact that my wife, she pushes every hard decision that we've ever gone through. I'm the flat out, no, we can't do it. It's impossible. And she's the one who always pushes it. She's the one who pushed it. We hired our very first person to work here whole time. Can't afford them. Can't train this person. They'll never be good as me, blah, 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 blah. We hire this person. That person still works with us today. And the day that person was hired, his name's Max, changed the business. Day one. And so she's right. She was the one who was like pushing to move into the shop that we're in today. And, all like the scary purchases and like the first loan we got. And it was like, oh, we can't get a loan. So we really balance each other out. She's what I would almost call like a CEO. I'm a CEO in a different way. I'm a CEO maybe in like product development, maybe marketing, and she's like a CFO. But she, super cool head. And if she was not around, this business would not even be, it'd still be in the basement. I'd be the only one making cables, and I'd be selling 10 cables a month and
right.
just doing the thing,
Right.
That really propelled it to be a real business. So,
yeah. Well, speaking of that, so like getting something off the ground, whether it is a business, whether it is even your own personal brand. I know a lot of people that I interact with online, or a lot of my friends, they're trying to have that internet presence or that brand presence of they're the brand, you know what I mean? Which it is not very much different from, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it comes down to the same ideas of those business principles of, if you're passionate, you're grinding it out, you're putting work in every day to do better. I mean, that's really what you have to do. And it's not going to be an overnight success. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What do they call those? An 8-year overnight success. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've been grinding away for forever and ever and ever. And then all of a sudden something happens and it hits for you, But I think it's supposed to happen that way because, for instance, that first year or two that you were, really like, maybe that's like, or when did you like go all in on Rattlesnake, and that was what you were going to do? Quit your job, do all that.
That's a good point and a good question, because I would seriously say the first 6 years, I would say that was a hobby.
Sure,
it was a hobby business. Yeah. We had a business license. We had the thing. We were doing the thing, but I still had my other job that was paying all the bills. And I would just dream one day I won't have to work on computers all day, and I could be doing this. And I would do this at night. So I'd work 9 to 5 computers, and then eat dinner, and then 6 to midnight I would do Rattlesnake, and I would do that 7 days a week. So that wasn't really all in. That's half in.
Yeah.
So all in was about that 6 year, about the halfway point of this business, where we hired, it was about 7 years ago is when we hired Max. That was the beginning of like, okay, we have to make sure that he has a paycheck every time. And that changed the whole structure of like, if it all fails, it's fine. We just do the other thing. But now it's like, well, Max needs a job, and then we start hiring more people. And that is, what a lot of people don't understand too, that first 6 years, Amy and I never took a paycheck.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
100%. A lot of people like start a business and they're like, well, I had to make my money, and then we don't have any money to do the stuff. I was like, we were fortunate to have another job at all those hours and never got paid for years. Right. Yeah. And, so that was about 6 years ago when we actually got our first paycheck. Right. So that's where I was like, okay, now we're all in. And that's when we were really trying to expand, how can we increase revenue? And at the same time, we were not taking any new clients in the web IT job. And we were actually like letting clients go. And then suddenly it flipped. I was doing 9 to 5 Rattlesnake. And at night I was doing some IT stuff. And that's the time where I felt like we were all in at that point.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what I like the way that you said that timeline. You guys have been around for 12 years, and about halfway through that was when you actually were full time. But when you say full time, it's just you, your wife, and Max, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so when we look at full time, I mean, that's still even a very, very infant level, outside company. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing that I've tried to explain to a lot of my musician friends that are trying, like I said, to make their own self brand or whatever you want to call that. It's like, dude, you got to stick around first of all. And like, most of the guys that I know that do the podcasting thing or do, any stuff online, that this is the hobby still.
Yeah.
Like nobody's making any money off this. We're doing it because we enjoy it.
Want to say full time. This last 12 months is the first time I had a day off. So I was working 7 days a week, both Amy and I.
Yeah.
And now I get Tuesdays off sometimes, sorta, and she gets Sundays off. So we don't even have days off on the same day.
Yeah.
And it's today. So we have to really work as hard as we can. I mean, we just look around like we're just beating ourselves up, but it's slowly paying off where we can start seeing things are stabilized where I can take a day off. 3 years ago, it was like I couldn't take a day off.
No.
And so that was kind of crazy.
Well, and I like to hear that too, though, because I mean, like most of the guys and girls that I talk to that are in the business of, anything in the music industry, whether you're making a product, whether you are making music, there's no days off. Like there aren't any. You if you take a day off, like you said, you're gonna be hurting.
Yeah.
But the good thing about it is kind of to harp back what we talked to at the beginning is it probably doesn't feel as much like a job as the IT thing did,
No.
So the working the 7 days a week, the long hours, it's almost irrelevant. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to get out of here, and it's not because I have to be here because no one else can do my job. There's a thing where there's an involvement.
Yeah.
I'm committed.
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm like, there's something to do. I'm going to do it. I want to, make some phone calls. Because now my roles have changed quite a bit too, where, I'm trying to market and trying to reach out to new people. And that's a whole other thing. So my point is you're right though about music. I mean, if you're a solid musician, you're playing every single minute of your waking day.
Yeah.
You don't look at it as like, well, I put in 4 hours of practice. That's a full day. You don't even think about it. You just pick up the guitar and play it all day.
Yeah.
So that's very similar, I think, on how I look at being here. It's like picking up the guitar. I don't want to put it down. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and to speak on the marketing side of things with you guys, to be completely fair, I was out of the gear world for about 10 years, from like the late 2000s to about 2020 ish.
Okay.
So one of the reasons why I started the podcast was to kind of get reoriented with, the gear world, And I don't shy away from being really, really ignorant about a lot of companies that exist and a lot of different products that exist. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't tell you components if I had to save my life for pedals or guitars or anything or specs. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I'm just a guy that likes to play guitar and I like to talk to people, you know?
That's cool.
But what I do enjoy is when I sit back and I get to talk to people that are so passionate about it and I get this wealth of knowledge that just hits me, you know? And whenever I sit and think about that I'm ignorant and I shouldn't be, you know, talking to these people or doing any of these things like that, it's like, no, that's just dumb, man. Like, if I don't know, I need to ask, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I have the podcast too, man. Like, I want to get super nerdy with cables because I don't know the first thing about what goes into making a guitar cable. Besides, I know I plug it into my input jack and I plug it into my amplifier.
Yeah, and it
works. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. Like, back in the day, I worked in a music store and I fell into good, bad, and different, however you see about it. I bought a bunch of monster cables because I was told they were the best. Right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, I still have one from there hanging on my wall right now.
Nice.
That still works just fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's get into the nerdy stuff of cables, man.
Okay.
I need to get learned. Okay.
Sure.
So what goes into making your cables specifically?
Well, I mean, what kind of nerdy do you want to get into? I mean, we just talking about soldering plugs, or are we talking about what makes a cable a good cable?
Let's talk about what makes a cable a good cable, and then we can get into
Okay.
maybe some intricacies of what you guys do.
Yeah, sure. So to me, I always say a good cable is based on two things: tone and durability.
Okay.
It's like if one of those are off, then the whole thing's not as great as it should be or it could be.
Absolutely.
So tone, you might have heard the term cable capacitance.
Yes, I have.
Right? So the idea is that the longer the cable, literally the cable becomes a capacitor. And it's just like a tone knob on your guitar. It's basically a low pass filter naturally just by the cable. Okay. So how to get a low capacitance cable is actually the physics of the cable. So that is, I don't want to get, that would be another level of nerdy, but if you have a nerd, yeah. Okay. But anyway, if you have a center conductor that goes through, right? There's the shield.
Yep.
Trying to do it this way.
No,
and the
you're good.
distance between these 2 points is relevant to capacitance where frequencies are bleeding off to shield. So the thicker the cable or the thinner the conductor will help that to make it low capacitance. So that's why our cable, for instance, feels incredibly beefy because it's a thick insulator in between, keeping that center away from the shield. And one thing that no one really ever talks about cable capacitance is you'll see everyone talking about, oh, ours is 20 PF and blah, 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 right? That's what everyone does. But the question is that you never see anybody say, we do, is at what feet is that 20 PF rated at?
Okay.
So
yeah.
it's a variable. So if it's 20 PF at 10 feet, it's not 20 PF at 15 feet. And it's not 20 PF at 20 feet, right? So, you know, I can cut a 3-foot cable and say it's 20 PF and then say it's 20 PF when I'm selling a 20-foot cable. That's not entirely accurate. So that is one thing where if you can keep your frequencies, instead of being a low pass filter, and keep them preserved as much as you can, because you can change all your stuff on your amp. You can adjust, put EQ pedals, and you can get all of that back, right? It's not like, oh, you've lost that high-end frequencies from the cable, and it's like, oh no, it's gone. I just think when you just start with the best setup frequency-wise right from the get-go, the less EQing and adjusting and compensating and buffers and all that stuff you got to put in there. So that's why I do like a low cap cable, but I also don't like it to be too low. You'll see things that are 10 PF at I don't know what foot and 15, and they become actually brittle, like sounding harsh.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Because it's almost too much high end is in there. And you'll have also people that, that's why coily cables came around with Hendrix and stuff. They wanted a 25-foot cable. So when you got that ice pick Strat bridge pickup tone and, just slamming into your face, you can tame it down with length, right? So you can use it the other way too. So there's not necessarily like, oh, you have to have a low cap cable. That doesn't necessarily mean the best.
Sure.
It depends on what you want and what you're trying to get out of a cable. And then durability, a cable's got to hold up. Cable is one of the pieces of gear that people like insanely neglect and abuse and don't care about and don't take care of it. And it's like, that's your lifeline between your guitar and your amp, or your instrument, your amp, right? They're throwing it around, they're tying it in knots, they're slamming in guitar cases, they're dragging it across concrete, it's stepping on it, kinking it, lighting it on fire. It's like beer all over it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it's just, they just get totally destroyed. So the idea is, okay, what can we do to like get the most strength out of it as possible? And we understand that we're not saying we're making an indestructible cable. No one can do that, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that I've always been really excited about here is everyone that solders a cable here is a musician.
Okay.
Every time they get hired, and they don't start as soldering. They do like a prep cook, and they work their way up to the soldering station.
Sure.
The very first day, we're going to solder the very first thing, and I'll tell them, like, have you ever been on stage and something doesn't work, and the crowd's looking at you, the bandmates are looking at you, you're basically butt puckering, trying to figure out in 5 seconds why I don't have any sound coming out of my stuff, right? You're unplugging stuff, plugging stuff back in. No one's helping you, right? And everyone here has been through that multiple times, right? I just want you to just always remember that when you're soldering these. Like, you don't want to be the reason behind that. Like, you don't want to cut corner, you don't want to go too fast, you cold joint, whatever. Just take your time, make it right, because we don't want to be part of that problem, even though it's totally possible. Who knows?
Oh, sure,
right?
Sure.
But I just want everyone to be aware of it. Like, make sure that's in the state of mind of, that's what we're doing here, right? We're trying to make a strong thing. And, but yeah, to me, that's where it's at.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Well, you're enforcing that pre-QA process, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's one of those things, like you said, man, like I can't tell you how many times, especially if I'm running like a crazy pedal board, and then all of a sudden I plug in and I don't have sound. It's just like, great. Where is this problem at? Because there's only about like 30 different options right now. Yeah. So, and that's one of those things that I've really kind of started diving into since I've started, getting back into the gear world, is not really so much the guitar pedals and the guitars and the amplifiers, but the subtle nuance things that most people don't think about, like, guitar picks, like cables, things that most people, like you said, will just drag through the dirt and not worry about it, throw it in your pocket and make sure it's, you got it for the gig, but that's one of those things that I've really started to invest in when it comes to the rig that I'm running, just because I don't want to be in that situation, and I want to have people and relationships with people that I know are making a quality product, and I don't like when people say, you said kind of one of those things about what is the best as far as, the PF stuff and all that.
Oh, yeah.
That is so subjective, man. Like,
Totally.
And that's one of those things that I just hate when people use that word, especially in the gear space, because man, for me, the best amp might be a PV Windsor, you know what I mean? Or, something that you would see at a pawn shop and not even look twice at, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've just never understood. It's like, I get the brand loyalty side of things, but I've never understood, like, this is the best. This is the pinnacle of what you can have. You know what I mean?
Well, it's the rules. I get stuff. I get people asking me advice all the time about all sorts of things, maybe not even related to cables. And that's a fun part of my job. I kind of like that. Just interfacing with customers, potential customers, and they'll sit there and say, like, they'll talk about buffers. And they're like, do I need a buffer? And I'm like, if you have to ask yourself, do I need a buffer? You probably don't.
You probably do. Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You don't know,
Yeah.
you know? It's
Yeah.
like if you say, I need a buffer because I got XYZ problem and the buffer is going to fix this, then you need a buffer. But if
Sure.
you're just sitting
Yeah.
there like,
Yeah.
I heard they're good. I heard I need one. Do I need one?
Yeah.
Or, you know, the classic, like, oh, I run modulation in front of a drive pedal. Is that bad? I'm like, do you like it? Does it sound better to you that way? It's not, you're not breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Even though there's a convention and maybe a starting point on pedal layout or something, but it's like there's no wrong.
No.
You know, I've seen people do stuff totally completely backwards, and that's their deal. And it's not like, wow, you're doing reverb first, huh? You know, I don't I don't ever say that because that's their thing. That's their sound.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the same thing with like cables. I don't like getting in argument because I'll get that too, where they'll be like, oh, well, how's yours compared to brand X or brand Y? And I'm like,
Sure.
I don't know. You know, it's like you got the specs.
Yeah.
You know, right now you're talking to the owner of the company. You know, I'll wait on chat while you try to get the owner of the other company on chat.
Sure.
On the other one, maybe
Right.
that's worth something. I don't know, but there's things like that are, you know, just part of it.
Oh yeah. Well, and I've brought this up multiple times, and once again, listeners, if you get offended by this, you're probably one of these people. The people that like to argue online about, you know, silly components of, you know, guitar and, you know, any gear, stuff like that, are usually the people that aren't doing a whole lot. You know, and I don't mean to say that disrespectfully, but it's just usually the fact of the matter. At least in my experience. I don't mean to be throwing shade at anybody. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
You know?
I'm just going to say no comment on that.
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's fine. I'll take all the hate. You guys can DM me all you want and send all the hate my way, okay? I promise you I won't be upset. I might laugh about it a little bit, but it'll be fine. But no, and most of the time, though, and this is one of the reasons why I like talking to people like yourself, is in the musician world, we've had these moments of, or not moments, we've had years and years and years and years of playing an instrument, trying to refine what we're doing. You know, if you start making something, you have that same process. It starts all over again. You're trying to refine the product. You're trying to make the best thing possible. And it builds you up to be a resilient, good human being. It truly does, man. So.
Yeah, it's humbling.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a way to look at it too. You know, it's really, you know, when you brought up Effects Bay, it's just insane how many builders I've met that don't build anymore.
Sure.
And how many, you know, great brands just went away, or so I always look at it as, you know, we're very fortunate to still be doing what we're doing, and we're fortunate that we're growing, and it's hard, and you know, my hat's off to every one of those, you know, people that ever try to do any kind of business. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I was perusing the website before we started talking, and I saw you guys have option for custom cables. You want to talk about that for a minute? What's up with that?
Well, I mean, the custom cables is in the sense of when we started the website, we didn't want to. There's this thing called the Jam Study. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, MIT's Jam Study, where if you have they would have a mall, and they would put out 100 different kinds of jam, and it was all these people would walk by it, and they would try to, you know, sell the jam, and they would, you know, count how many jars of jam, how much money they made, whatever. And then the next weekend, they did it with only 3 flavors of jam, same amount of people, and they said, okay, which one had the best sales? The 3 jammer did, right? So when our website, and we're, you know, build all sorts of cables and types of cables, it starts to be a lot of jam. And then when you start saying, oh, you can do 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot, 7 foot, you know, all the way around, it's almost overload. You know, people go, oh my God, I don't know if I want a 4 foot or a 5 foot. You know, it's like they just really just get in their head. So we have, you know, 10, 15, and 20, real easy. So custom is more about, we do whatever you want. You want a 7.5 foot cable, and you want like a loom, and you want, you know, something that's not on the website, you know, a jam that's not on the shelf.
Right.
We can work with you. And that just gives you an opportunity to say, hey, do you have this color weave? Or can you do it with this kind of plug? And, you know, and it just starts a conversation. And all that forum does is just emails me, and then we go back and forth, either phone call or whatever. But it's not like there's like a totally different custom cable that no one can get. It's just part of more of a build your own specialty pizza kind of thing. But,
yeah. I wasn't assuming that it had you had some secret weapon in the back or anything.
Okay.
No, because one of the problems I've always ran into is I used to run a switching system for my pedal board a lot, and I guess to be fair, I didn't do a whole lot of looking. I kind of just settled for what I could find as far as the patch cables were concerned. But what I really needed was a straight to a 90 on everything to make sure that those fit in that switcher properly, and I wasn't getting these weird bends that were happening and ruining patch cables and stuff like that. So that was one of the things that really intrigued me when I saw the website. I was like, oh man, well, I know what we're gonna probably do some measuring after the podcast and figure out what we can do to get this going, man. Because I'm at the point now where I'm pretty satisfied with all the gear. It's just I need to fix problems now with said gear. To make it a little more.
And that never ends.
No. No. We just get things that make it easier, and then we find new problems.
Yeah, until you get to the new problems.
Yeah.
I know that. I know how the game's played.
Yeah, it's a never-ending process, but it's a fun process in itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So another thing, man, I'm a huge fan. This is going to sound super dumb, but I'm a huge fan of the baseball tees, so I definitely know what I'm doing after this too.
Oh, nice, nice.
But you guys have been killing it from my perspective as far as the social media stuff goes. Like I see you guys every single time I open Instagram. And I know it's not like that you're posting a lot. It's just you guys are marketing yourself very well, and the algorithm's picking it up. And that's one of the things. It's like in the past probably 2 or 3 months. That's like every time I've seen it, I'm like, oh, there they are again. There they are again.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's a good thing It's a good thing because now you know that it's like you're kind of solidified. And I know you guys have been doing it for a long time, but the social media side of stuff is always something that's been kind of hard for some companies to get behind. You know what I mean?
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you guys? I'm sorry.
Oh no, you go finish your thought.
Oh no, I was just saying, how do you guys really go about that? I know that's kind of your realm too. So
yeah. Well, from Effects Bay. One of the things that I learned right off the bat, that there was a book I read, and it was insanely awesome in the sense of at first I used to talk about everything that I wanted to do and like what my dream pedals were and like what my pedal board was, until I flipped the script on it one day, and we started doing Pedal Line Friday, which was an Effects Bay thing. Now it's a Rattlesnake thing, where people submit their pedal line. Mm-hmm. It was amazing, the idea of like creating a community of sorts, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain point no one gives a crap what I like at all.
Sure.
But when everyone is micro internet famous for a day, everyone is excited about, like, hey, they just did a rattlesnake sighting of my band on our Instagram. And they're, everyone's linking towards that, and they're like all excited that, there's a shot of their band, guys playing a rattlesnake, and we posted it on our thing. So a lot of our Instagram posts are rattlesnake sightings. And, we do, artist spotlights, and we do Pedal Line Fridays. We try to do stuff where it's like, okay, it's just try to be super positive for one. Just trying to enforce that we're all gear nerds, and we all want to have fun, and we want to play, and want to make art, make music. And we want to support that 100% with our platform. So to me, that's rule number one. If you can do that, then suddenly people will associate with that Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. Like, so they're kind of excited about it. And you still have to pepper it. I still have to do my reels and talk about, a sale or something going on, like, these new shirts that came out. I did a reel about that today. Mm-hmm. There's still stuff where, we have to promote our own thing, but I really do like it when we talk about bands and talk about sightings, and that's what's fun. Because to me, sightings, like cables, they're not that cool. They never were. And I love making them just a little cooler, maybe, than I remember cables being 20 years ago for me. Mm-hmm. And when I start talking to people, and they have their experience buying cables, that's another thing about neglecting cables. When they're $5 and you don't care about them, you got 4 of them in your bag and you just throw them away when they go bad, versus you pay a little and you have a little connection with the company, and you got a little pride that you're a Rattlesnake user and you were featured on a sighting. Guess what? You actually take care of your cables a little better.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a good thing too. And I love the fact that, especially locally in our little town of Missoula, there's so many bands here. It's almost embarrassing when I go out and I'll see a band and it's like rattlesnakes everywhere, and you're just like, I mean, it's cool, but it's, it's like, oh man, it's like, wow, it's just insane. But I just thinking how I feel like specifically those bands, they're really taking pride with the brand. They're like stoked to rep it. They're stoked, they love playing their, Fender Jazzmaster, and they got their, Fender amp that they're stoked on, and they're stoked on the cable that they have connecting it all together, and their Earthquaker pedals and blah, 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 blah. I just love having something that is, people aren't just going to, not care about and whatever. And just something like, wow, they have pride in that product. That's really satisfying as a builder, for sure.
Well, I think it's a win-win, because usually the companies that do well on social media are the ones that have that community aspect to whatever social media they have. You know what I mean? When you come there, that you're not coming to. No one's just going to go to your website and be like, oh, I'm just buying a cable and I'm never going to talk to these guys again. You know what I mean? It's like, no, you're going to be, you're going to see us online, and we're going to, show you some love by, hey, we appreciate you buying a cable from us and using it, and here's a picture of your band on our social media. You know what I mean? Now it's like, oh man, it's almost like you have, you're building these professional relationships with the customer base. You know what I mean? And that's what keeps the customer base there for you, man. I've never seen a company that treats their customers well not do well themselves. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I mean, it seems kind of self-evident, but I've seen plenty of companies that don't do that. I
mean, to me, the grind that we were talking about, to me, it's the grind means slow growth. It means steady growth, but it's about creating a foundation.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about. When you have this foundation, you have foundation of process, and you have a foundation of team members that work here, and you have a foundation of customer base and community. Like, all of those need to be super solid.
Yeah.
One of those aren't right, it all falls apart too, right? Yeah. So that's where I like the grind versus like, being just the hot popular cable company, and overnight, and we're like, made it one day. That's really hard because all of those pillars and foundations aren't set, and it could really topple really easily if you're not careful. So we're very aware of trying to maintain those foundations from day one. So hopefully that's all going to be self-evident as we move forward, as we keep going. But yeah.
Well, I don't see why it wouldn't, man, because I mean, from the social media stuff that I've seen from you guys and the conversation we've been having, no, I don't see why there wouldn't be a growth of the community and a growth of the business. I mean, everybody seems super down to earth. Everybody seems super friendly. You can tell a lot about a company, especially in the gear world, which people might seem like this is intimidating, but it's really not. When you can send an email or a DM and you're actually talking to the person running the company. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, there's no guesswork there. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, hey, this is what I'd like to do. And they either say like, yep, 100% we can do that. Or no, let's figure out how we can get to that, or how we can get this going. You know what I mean? Yeah. And thankfully, with there being a plethora of gear companies, regardless of what they're making. Oh, yeah. The good thing is, though, most of them are small enough where you still get those personal interactions from the people actually building or the people that are actually running the company. Yeah. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, if you emailed, I don't know, one of the big three, you're probably not going to talk to Paul Reed Smith. You know what I mean?
Probably not.
It's not impossible, I'm sure, but it's not very likely. That being said, I'm not, throwing any hate at their customer service. I'm sure it's fantastic. But my thing is the personal touch that you get from, companies that are still, not that massive conglomerate, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I guess conglomerate might not be the best word to say, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, to me, from day one, we've always really been super pro communication. So we always try to comment and answer people's emails, and I mean just the stuff you think is just common sense communication, and a lot of people struggle with it. But we've always really been focused on maintaining those professional relationships, like you're saying. But there's a point in my head that I'm like, okay, but scalability is going to come into play where I can't answer every email, I can't pick up every phone call, and I know that's out there. There's a marker in the timeline out there in the future. All I'm saying is I'm going to try to do as much as I can until we hit that marker, and then we just figure it out. But and that's just part of the thing. And I just know, talking to my customers or our customers, that that's a big thing for them. They love it. I mean, when they call, they think they're going to call like some hotline or something. I answer the phone. It's my cell phone, right? And they're like, I can't believe I'm talking to Hank. And I'm like, yeah. Just like, I'm the guy. What do you need? You know? Yeah, you need a buffer.
Yeah, you need a buffer. You definitely do. No, man. No, but that's the other good thing. It's extremely, realistic of you to already know that is gonna probably happen at some point in time. But that being said, man, with the way that you guys have built that foundation, I don't even see that being an issue when you can't respond to every single email. You know what I mean? Because you've already built that community of trust amongst your customer base that you guys have. Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. Every order we have, there's a notepad, and I handwrite, James, thanks for your order, and I put Rattlesnake Team on it. Every order. I've done that from day one. So when it was my day off this year on Tuesdays, I'm not here. I'm like, oh no, like they don't get a note, So Amy starts writing the notes on Tuesdays, and I was really worried, like, oh no, people are going to be upset that they're getting a note because we don't say our names. Because I used to write Hank on there, but then I was like, that's unfair to the people who work here.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I didn't build that particular cable. I built that one, but I'm putting my name on that one. Right. So we just started doing Rattlesnake Team. And so Amy writes all the Tuesdays, and people respond just as well. Like that they're excited that they got a handwritten note.
Absolutely.
And those are the things where, okay, that was scalability step one, where I couldn't write every single note that went out of the store. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so there's things that, we're getting through it. And I think it's a lot about company philosophy and just effort. So even though I didn't write that note on Tuesday, Amy did. And people are actually starting to know who Amy is too. So that's cool. But yeah.
Well, and it's those small personal touches that really, seal the deal when you open up an order from a company and you have a handwritten note. Like, that's almost unheard of these days. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? But to be fair, and I might be a little biased just because, I buy a decent amount of stuff from different companies and stuff like that. I have noticed with, the companies that are doing really, really well in the past probably 10 years are the ones that still do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you said, it's something so simple. It wouldn't, I'm sure it is time consuming to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, like it's the most genuine thing you can do to show your appreciation to a customer that buys something from you guys. You know what I mean? So, well, with us getting about on time here, let's talk about the rest of the year. Okay. So I know you guys got a sale coming up here pretty soon. Yeah. But what's else on tap for you guys to close out the 2024?
Yeah. I don't know. We always do something, try to do some fun stuff for the end of the year. So we're still kicking around some possible new products. Might be doing, part of the custom forum, we do wireless cables. It's transmitter cables. So that's not on the website. That will be on the website. We're doing a new run of combo speaker pigtails. Those are going to come up. Might be doing some new weave color options, but we have like a whole spreadsheet of product development ideas that we're always just trying to figure out what we want to do. Last year's was coily cables. Those we finally came out with those. Big hit, and we still might even do some different colors in those. I'm not quite sure yet, but yeah, I know we're getting to the point of the year that orders and like build orders for like the wire mill have to be in to do
Yeah.
those. So we have to like kind of make some decisions.
Right. Right.
But,
Getting down
yeah.
to the wire. No
Yeah.
pun intended. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's super cool, man. Before we wrap this up too, where can everybody find you guys at?
Well, you can find us on all the socials, Rattlesnake Cables, Instagram, Facebook. You can go to our website, rattlesnakecables.com. But for you, we're going to do a 20% off coupon. So if any of your viewers, listeners, go to rattlesnakecables.com /Man the Helm. There'll be a page where you can pick up a 20% coupon if you want to give us a try.
There you go. Well, hey, man, dude, definitely appreciate that. Listeners and viewers, all of that will be linked down in the show notes. So if you're confused on where to go, just scroll down just a little bit, click those show notes. I'll have links to everything for all things Rattlesnake down there. So, well, Hank, dude, I appreciate you taking the time, man. It was a good talk for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Love these.
Absolutely. Well, for Hank and for all of you guys, we will check you guys next week on Man the Helm podcast.